and welcome to Behind the Dean's Desk, conversations from the College of Graduate and Professional Studies at the Chicago School. I'm Dr. Alisha DeWalt, Dean of the College of Graduate and Professional Studies. This series is designed to highlight our community voices, ideas, and professional impact that shape our graduate and professional programs. In each episode, we step away from formal titles and curricula to have a real conversation about the work we do, why it matters, and how it connects to practice in the field. So today, I'm joined by Dr. Susan Foster, an Associate Dean for our college. Dr. Foster brings expertise in systems-level leadership with a strong focus in program development, accreditation, and workforce-aligned graduate education. So in this conversation, we'll explore these areas as well as the journey that led her to this work. So hello, welcome, Susan. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So Susan, to start, can you share us your portfolio and give us a sense of where you spend the most of your time in your role?
Absolutely. So I'm incredibly fortunate to be able to work with the applied behavioral analysis programs, our brand new occupational therapy program, all things counselor education. So for us, that would be clinical mental health counseling and counselor education and supervision, as well as I work very closely with our college level Office of Placement and Training. So all things field related.
Great. And where do you spend most of your time, Susan, in this work? What feels most meaningful to you in what you're doing throughout your day?
Direct access and work with our chairs to really create very meaningful, intentional programs for our students. It's not just about ensuring that we're thinking about the today in their programs, but thinking about the tomorrow too. And so some of my most valued time, I think, is really in like the tactical and strategic pieces of program planning, accreditation work, putting in really high level assessment metrics to really ensure that the program's meeting the needs of the students. Just yesterday, I was talking with one of the chairs about, state of the discipline and where we are with things. And it led me down and those who know me know I do that at times. It led me down an assessment rabbit hole. And so last night, I was looking at just state of the discipline, not just in my portfolio, but across our college, because we really do have a very unique college and that we serve so many areas. And with the field component, it touches so many areas. So I was down a rabbit hole last night looking at like those tactical and strategic pieces. So anything that allows me in my portfolio to sit in that space with chairs is so incredibly meaningful.
Fantastic. Thank you. Susan, I would love to hear more about your journey that led you to this role. I think, as we all know in higher education, there's no straight path to a leadership role. There's no straight path to even in getting into higher education. So could you share your story with me?
Sure. I'm going to go way back. I'm not going to carbon date myself, but I am going to date myself a little. I live in the community in which I went to school. I have moved around the United States and have come back home. And it was really quite a fascinating journey. I'm a school counselor and a clinical mental health counselor by trade. And I had a fairly unfortunately common experience in my formative years with a school counselor. And it really could have impacted the trajectory of what I did. And so I always wanted to be different than what I had. And so that propelled me into the space of wanting to be a school counselor. And I was for a really, really long time practicing school counselor. But that led me into this place of we need more school counselors that do the thing that kids need. Kids need they need you to be that person. You might be the only person that ever tells a kid you can do this. You might be the only person that ever tells the kid, I can see you. I remember one of my first experiences as a school counselor. I got called into a kindergarten setting where the teacher he was 3 days into kindergarten, and they were like, I don't know if he can do this. He's not behaving. And it was such an empowering moment for me and that child to say, he's behaving in the only way he's ever been accustomed to behaving, you know? And so for me, school counseling was so important. Working with the families in private practice and working with trauma was so incredibly important. Then it took me to the place of now I want to teach others the importance of everything that I see as really, really incredibly valuable in the work that I do. And then there was just like this natural progression into leadership. Anybody who ever gets a chance to sit with me will hear me say relationships are everything. Relationships get us in and out of everything. And so the idea that I now get to take that in my leadership role, it's just been kind of really this interesting natural bridge that has kind of been the underpinning of my journey.
Well, thank you for sharing. I will say you and I, we talk about relationships a lot, right? And how that builds our leadership expertise, how we build together as a community in the college. Can you talk more about how relationships truly are effective in the work that we do? So what does that look like? How does it, get you through a challenging situation or ground you in a specific area? Why is that such an important skill set for you?
I'm really glad you asked that question. And I'm going to go back to two of my mentors in life. One person is still actually in the school setting where I was a school counselor. I think she's just made her 56th year in the district. And one of the things that she has always said, and it's so profound to me, and it's simple, and yet it's not in the same space. She would say, the quote, Susan, people don't care what you know until they know you care. And so like sitting in a space with people and they know that, no, Susan really does care about me. No, Susan really does care about my growth. She does care about mentorship. She does care about these things. She wants the best for me. And so having that grounding, that really important, holding that space with people makes all the rest of the work possible.
Yeah.
If you have to have a challenging conversation with a student, a faculty member, a chair, an external stakeholder, whomever it is, that shouldn't be the first time you ever have an interaction with them. And if it is, what have you done to create like the psychological safety to be able to do that? And so I actually see that as like one of the most important facets of my job is making sure that I've cleared the pathway by having a solid relationship for our programs to do the work. And so relationships to me are everything.
Yeah. And then when we think about that for our graduate students, right? Knowing that's a skill set in learning how to build relationships and cultivate relationships. How do we build that into our curriculum or community when we're working with students in helping professions or those that might be a bit more technical, skill-based professions at our university? What would you suggest to faculty?
So the first thing I would say is that the recognition that while it is definitely something that it's definitely something that you're going to want to build into curriculum, it's also its own standalone skill. And just like when I went in with the kindergarten student, I'm going to go back to that example. We should not assume that people are well versed in that skill. We have to create opportunities and space in our curriculum to have formative and summative types of encounters with relationships. One of the programs that I work with, well, actually, two across two different disciplines, both ABA and counseling, that has been at the forefront of the work that we've been doing since I've taken on this role. Is that we're we're very aware of what this looks like and means. We're very aware that we model it, that it's not just about talking the talk, but are we walking the walk? And what does that look like? Are we doing it in faculty meetings? Are we doing it with each other? Are we doing it in teams meetings? Are we doing it in town halls where we're bringing our students together to have those sorts of experiences? Are we naming it? I think that's something
Yeah.
that's also really important. Um, are we naming it in our assignments with students? Are we saying this is the skill that I just demonstrated, and let's make it applicable to the real world. This is why this is important. When you're sitting with a teacher that doesn't understand why a student is acting the way they're acting, can we all speak the same language? And I think when we think about non-judgmental listening cycles, active listening, listening with empathy, all of those sorts of things, being able to name it as a skill and not something that somebody has just had access to is so incredibly important. And so I think, while yes, we bring in our own experiences, making it an objective learning experience for a student and giving them opportunities to practice that, incredibly valuable.
Agreed. I think that's so well said. It's so transferable, right? That skill, not only professionally, but personally and coming together as a community. I think in higher education, what we talk about, right? We're in these evolving times, and I can see from the relationships being built in our college and having that intentionality, and you setting the example and the expectation, and being intentional about cultivating that, right? Is we can work better as a community to get us through some of these challenging situations or these new obstacles that we need to face. So thank you for that work and naming it. I don't think we name that skill, right? That's great.
Yeah, and I think that also creates the space to name other hard things, other transferable skills, right? I was talking with a student the other day, and we were talking about the fact that listen and silent have the same letters, and that's not on accident, right? And
Feels like
so,
that.
so
Yeah.
it just all part of that really intentional package of communication and how that really um, is vital to working relationships and having them be the grounding for all of the rest of the stuff that we do.
Absolutely. Susan, I'd love to talk a bit about interdisciplinary work that you're leading. I know you have an exciting project that you're working on behalf of the college. I'd love for you to just share that and also talk um, about how we create spaces outside of the classroom for faculty and students to come together through this work, and perhaps what excites you from that, or what we're expecting some outcomes to be.
Yeah, so I want to go back to something that I mentioned, that rabbit hole that I went down last night. And part of the rabbit hole was just the dearth of resources and, what we're facing in the next 10 to 12 years, just in terms of people being able to access appropriate levels of mental health, allied health, interdisciplinary care, and what that looks like. And we are not one of the again, I'm going to go back to the beauty of the work we do in this college. It's so interdisciplinary, right?
Yes.
There's so much that we can learn from each other. There's so many impactful things that we're doing with clients in counseling, for instance, that are important to what Dr. May and his team are doing in ABA, and Dr. Holly will be doing in OT, and Dr. Burke is doing over in marriage and family. Um, so many places in which it's hand in glove. I wouldn't even say overlaps, just hand in glove.
Hmm.
And sometimes we get, we're so incredibly passionate about our own work. We get a little bit siloed in our thinking and we don't think about how another discipline is like hand in glove to us. And so creating space for intentional conversations around the interdisciplinary work is really high on my priority list. Bringing people together to have conversations about what's happening in your discipline. How can we support that? How can we write proposals together so our students can do that work together? How can we create events where our students can come together and see that we're not so different in terms of our philosophy? Yeah, maybe in terms of how it all applies and in the settings we work, but we're really not that different. And so this time last year, we started to really kind of brainstorm ways in which we could, as a university, hold space for that and model that within our college. And so one of the things that we came up with was holding our first annual College of Graduate and Professional Studies virtual conference that will be interdisciplinary. And it's such an exciting time. We have a group of individuals working on our conference committee that come from varied disciplines within the college. And we've been talking about what that will look like. We've got some really exciting things planned just to showcase the work that we've all been doing across disciplines and to create avenues and invitations to continue that work beyond the 3-day conference, right? So it's very exciting. It's going to be shameless plug. It's in April, and so be sure to check in with the check your email because that's where all of the communication is going to come around registering and attending the conference. We invite our students, our alumni, because to quote my dear colleague, Dr. Rodney Harris, we're a community. And so bringing that community together to like hold that space, so important. So faculty, staff, Dr. Neelam will be there as our keynote. Students, alumni, it's just going to be such an engaging opportunity for us to talk about the hand in glove work that we're doing as a community.
Thank you for sharing that. I also think about as our graduate students prepare to enter their careers, right? We're providing them maybe some opportunities to see outside of the field that we're working in, right? So if you're a counselor, for example, in a hospital, you're not just working with other counselors. You're going with psychiatrists, you're working with doctors, you're working with business managers. And it's so important to be able to again use transferable skills and all those pieces, but to be able to look outside of your profession and see how do people really work together in helping professions. And so I think that's really exciting to be able to model some of that work in those panel presentations, in applied research and conversations around that work we've done. So thank you for sharing that. We're really looking forward to it.
The other thing I would say is that one of the things we also do very well in our college is that we marry the work that some of our folks are doing on ground with the work that some of our folks are doing in remote and online settings. And so I think that that's the other thing that this kind of really brings together is interdisciplinary work without boundaries.
Yeah.
No borders, right? Like
Yep.
you might be doing telehealth as a counselor and working with a group of individuals who are working on behalf of that person in a ground-based setting. And so it goes across disciplines, it goes across settings, it goes across anything that would have been an access barrier to care. We're working on removing those obstacles. And we see the conference as one of those steps in terms of, hey, this is what this looks like. This is how we do these really innovative things in a world that's kind of in a stuck place with some of this
Yeah.
and not really knowing which direction to go.
Exactly. And I think that dovetails really nicely into the next question I wanted to explore with you, which is around that workforce shortages in helping professions, which you mentioned earlier, in partly what led you to this role, right? In addressing some of those needs. And my question for you is what role do we have, what responsibility do we have as graduate programs in addressing those workforce shortages? Where can we make an impact? Where could we be responsible to close that gap in these professions?
I cannot tell you how much I appreciate that question. And it's something that I know that my counterpart in the college, myself, our programs, we've all been having these conversations, as we enter into such a dynamic space in the world and working with communities to better understand their needs, where the gaps are, those kinds of things. I was just talking to somebody last week at a university, and she does school counseling. And she was talking about the fact that they will graduate out X number of students, and it's 5 times less than they need in their local area to fill the gap. You know,
Yeah,
I was talking to another colleague, and they were talking about some of the projected numbers just for counselors that in 2037, 2038, it'll be one counselor to every 500 people. And, our professional associations do a good job of like keeping their finger on the pulse of those numbers. I think right
yeah,
now it's about one to every 350 people. And so when you think about that, takes into account every type of setting, rural, urban, suburban. I think about our rural communities and like
yeah.
the barriers to that. And so that leads me to your actual question, which is what do we do as graduate programs? And I think the first thing I would tell any graduate program is don't wait, early, often, assessing the needs of the local community for which or the national community or the statewide community, whatever, wherever you find yourself as a program, really understanding the needs of those communities. I think advisory boards are another really great way, and have those meetings early and often to really, really understand um, the very quick changing dynamic needs of communities. Not that we pivot every time there's a change, but it's, are we creating a sustainable model that sustains with pivots, right? So that's
Yeah,
that's the one thing. The two thing, are we preparing our students for a world in which telehealth is a reality?
right.
And so getting with your interdisciplinary partners who are already doing a really good job with that. Shameless plug for counselor education, because I know that they're doing that. And so
Mhm.
reaching out to Dr. Andy Brown and saying, talk to me about how to embed telehealth curriculum. Understanding AI and where AI is in this really kind of vastly changing landscape of behavioral and community health. And so reaching out to Dr. Burke or Dr. Demers and saying, what's happening? How do I better assist my students to understand that what this looks like?
Yeah,
And so the first thing I would do would be to say that programs need appropriate planning for what that's going to look like. Reach out to your colleagues, understand the best practices and what they're doing. Make sure that you're prepared on that side before you approach it with your students and train them for that. But for me right now, uh, high quality supervision, ability to have applied practice, offering opportunities for additional learning credentials, having students telehealth ready, having
mhm.
students AI ready. I think that if I had to say the top five for me, those are the things that would come up for me today.
That's really insightful. Thank you. I would also, as we were talking, I was also thinking about how we ensure our students are ready for that next step in their career once they graduate, right? They got their license in hand, they're ready to go. And, one of the pieces that I hear anecdotally from students is I would love to continue to work at my community behavioral health center. I'd love to be in my community. Unfortunately, I've got to pay back my student loans and I need to go into a more private practice setting. I need to go somewhere where financially I can be better equipped to pay back those student loans. And so I would encourage also, as programs are looking at internships and seeing how we can support our students in those, is working with your leaders, working with grants and scholarship opportunities to provide students those paid internships that we know counselors don't, they're not typical for counselors to get paid for those training hours, unlike many other professions. I think that can be so critical in addressing some workforce shortages in communities that truly all communities need it, but really some of those areas where you just financially it can be challenging for graduates to support. Does that make sense?
It does. And I would also, I'd add to that, that we have some programs that are doing a phenomenal
Yeah,
job with almost 100% placement of their program graduates
yeah,
into their internship sites in ways that feel safe, whether it's psychologically safe, financially safe, environmentally safe,
yeah.
whatever the metric is. And so, um, Dr. Polly over in DC does an excellent job understanding the landscape. I would also add to that, Alicia, that one of the other things that I sometimes hear from alumni is that I got my degree, now what? And so it can be a very challenging time to feel like you've been in this cocoon of support with your graduate program.
Right.
And now here I am, I'm out on the outside world and like you really begin to question. Sometimes the imposter syndrome comes in and it's like, why did they let me out? Am I
Right.
really capable of doing this?
Exactly.
And so I also, when I go back to that psychological and environmental safety factor, it's also having real conversations with our students about supervision post graduation. Depending on your discipline, it's required. Some disciplines it's not, but like seeking mentorship and what that looks like, helping them bridge like the next chapter. I tell people, we're lifelong learners. And so really also setting our students up for the knowledge that you're going to be a lifelong learner. You're expected to ask questions. You're expected to challenge. One of the things I tell students is you should be interviewing potential employers just like they're interviewing you. And if you get the sense that it's not good for you, step away. Again, whether that's environmentally, psychologically, or financially unsafe, step away from it. And so I think even having those very empowering conversations helps with what that all looks like and means for a student who is going out into a very dynamic professional world that is not necessarily, depending on where you are and what you practice. Graduate school sometimes doesn't prepare you for that. And so creating a space to do that, I think, is also important to get folks workforce ready.
Absolutely. And I think what you said around building your community, building your mentors, making sure you have those people, that all goes back to that relationship development skill, right? That building of that skill gets you to that place and having that level of support.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. It's part of the community.
that's right. I like it. Okay, Susan, I have one last question for you that I
Sure.
ask everyone. So as we step away from titles and roles again in this conversation behind the dean's desk, what's one thing you hope people better understand about the work you do and why it matters beyond the institution?
Because I think everybody deserves to have a champion. Everybody deserves to have a champion. Whether it's a child that you're sitting on the floor doing ABA with, whether it is the work that our public health and biomedical sciences are doing to better prepare people to create systems, whether it's our business psychology folks and all of the things they're doing in order to ensure that there are appropriate systems in place for the work to occur, whether it's the counselor, whether it's the OT, whether it's the marriage and family therapist, everybody deserves to have a champion. And I mean, I I believe that the stuff we do is some of the best kept secrets in all of training. And so I know this might sound cliche, but I really feel like we are amongst champions. And so everybody deserves to have a champion.
Thank you, Susan. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you and have these conversations. So thank you for joining me, and we will be in touch.
Thank
Thanks.
you.